My name is Yeha. I woke up under a calm sun, but the relief of being in my own 18-year-old body didn't last long. I was in a strange forest, still wearing my old work uniform. I felt a mix of fear and strange relief. At least I wasn't in a borrowed shell. My parents likely wouldn't miss me. I was just a source of shame to them. I pushed those thoughts aside to focus on survival. From a cliff, I saw an ancient Western-style city with a massive tower. I knew I had to reach it before dark to avoid whatever monsters lived here. The forest was alien, filled with smooth-trunked trees and strange creatures. By nightfall, I was lost and terrified. Pairs of red eyes, belonging to what I later named moonspike wolves, began hunting me. One slashed my eye, and I fled toward a faint light at the city wall. The guards were not kind. A man with sunken eyes watched from a window while the wolves closed in. He lit a strange pipe. The smoke drove the young wolf into a frenzy. It leaped through the window and killed him. I used the opportunity to climb inside, finding a bloody mess. I wrapped my wounds, stole a dagger and a black cloak, and slipped into the silent town. I didn't get far. After an explosion and a brief collapse, I woke up in a foul, damp prison cell. A cloaked figure tossed an unconscious woman named Irite into the cell with me. We couldn't understand each other's language, but we shared our names. Suddenly, a cloaked man entered. Irite turned into a melting, bone-revealing monster that reached into my chest. I fought back in a blind panic, losing my senses. When I woke, I vomited up a human finger. I realized then that surviving might be worse than dying. A cloaked man dragged me by my hair to a vast hall where a masked, divine messenger explained our fate. We were in an assassin academy. We were to be brainwashed into obedient tools. When I tried to speak, an invisible force choked me until I bowed my head. The masked man used a miracle to heal my scalp and seal my mind. My old life faded, and my new life as a weapon began. I stood in shock as a cloaked man grabbed my hair, right after a piece of my scalp had been torn away. The silence of the wide space was broken by the steady footsteps of a man in fine, Western-style clothes. He wore a white mask with a faint smile on the front and a crying black mask on the back. He was a gifted one, and his thoughts entered my mind directly. He welcomed us to an assassin organization, not a cult. I learned we were to be brainwashed into obedient pawns. We would undergo 6 months of training in combat and complete body control, even moving our own hearts, followed by a 6-month internship. If we failed our missions, we would be sent home, though what that meant was a dark mystery. I watched as the masked man used his miracle to brainwash others, their eyes going blank. When my turn came, he commented on my nice face and used his power to heal my scalp. A wave of dizziness hit, and my memories of my old world turned blurry. My mind was sealed. 10 years passed. I became a weathered, 28-year-old emotionless assassin. For a decade, I was a puppet of the guild, enduring humiliation and torment. But now, during a mission to kill a blessed one named Ivaya, everything changed. I attacked her with speed and afterimages, but she blocked every strike with her sword. She was a strong, God's chosen. As we fought, she used a special move that forced me to remember the day I was captured. She then kicked me down, bound me with glowing chains, and placed her hands on my head. She used a purify spell, and a bright light shone as dark smoke rose from my mind. The pain was unbearable, but the brainwashing broke. My real name, Yi, and my memories of being from another world flooded back. I remembered the 10 years of silent suffering and the teacher who had mistreated me. My mission to kill Ivaya failed, but I gained something better, my freedom. Now, I have only one goal: to destroy the assassin guild that stole a decade of my life. After 10 years of brainwashing and servitude as a weapon for the assassin guild, my mind finally exploded with the truth. Ivia's purification ritual broke the chains on my soul, and I remembered who I was. Yi, a traveler from another world. For a decade, I had stood out as an elite killer, even though I couldn't understand a word of the local language. My missions were only possible because a masked divine messenger projected the tasks directly into my mind. Now free, I faced Ivaya. My hood fell back to reveal a wild, bearded face. I could only reply to her in my own tongue, stating I didn't understand her. Eventually, She realized our barrier and used a mental link to call me uncle. She begged me to lead her to the guild's headquarters to save her twin sister, whom she claimed was super cute. Knowing the brutal reality of the guild, I realized her sister was likely brainwashed or dead. To protect Ivaya from certain suicide, I wove a lie. I told her sister was a saint, being prepared as a vessel for a god, and that we needed a year of training before we could strike. When she grew suspicious and pressed a sword to my throat, I didn't flinch. My decade of killing had removed my fear of death. Frustrated by my silence, she slapped me and stormed off. I didn't stay shackled for long. Using the body control techniques the guild taught me, I dislocated my joints and slipped my hands and feet out of the irons. I was truly free. My first act of liberation was to cut off my filthy, matted hair, a symbol of my 10 years of slavery. I shed the name, Yi-He, and chose a new identity, Gan-He. I found a secluded lake and spent hours scrubbing away a decade of grime until the water turned black. After washing my clothes and trimming my hair with a dagger, I sat by a fire and reborn. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was a hunter. I planned to use this new world to my advantage, starting by finding better teachers and learning the language properly. My past was a shadow, and my future was finally my own. I didn't have to search long for my first meal as a free man. The forest provided. A pack of moonspike wolves surrounded my fire, their red eyes glowing in the dark. 10 years ago, these creatures hunted me, but now I was the hunter. Using the speed and skill I gained as an assassin, I killed them effortlessly. I roasted one over my fire, and though the meat was bland and wild, I ate it without complaint. I've learned to endure things I dislike. Later that night, I spotted a tiny figure scavenging my leftovers. It was a member of the small folk, or divine gifted. His name was Sairoa. To avoid the hassle of a language barrier, I pretended to be deaf and mute, communicating only through the mental link he established. Sairoa was kind and simple-minded, a perfect guide. He had been exiled from his tribe for being a fake, gifted one. While most of his kind can control elements from birth, he can only feel them. Through our conversations, I learned about the 4 races of this world: giants, humans, dwarves, and the small folk. Humans are the most ordinary, yet they persist. I also learned about mental power. In this world, it's believed your mental strength is fixed at birth on a scale of 1 to 1,000. If you have over 100, you are a divine gifted. Sairoa has enough power to speak into minds, but not enough to move elements. He believes he can train to increase his power, a concept people here think is impossible. Sairoa asked to travel with me, fearing the lonely road. I agreed, realizing I could use him to learn the local language and the secrets of mental power. For 6 months, we traveled without a set goal. I practiced the language, which is incredibly difficult without books, while Sairoa tried to master his mental cultivation. I also learned that gifts from the gods don't create elements. They only manipulate what is already around them. I'm keeping my secrets close, letting him believe I'm just a lonely warrior. As long as he keeps trying to grow stronger, I'll be right there to learn his methods for free. Humans are divided into 4 races. The relationship between humans and other human races is quite complicated. The general relationship is roughly like this. Humans are in the middle, connected somewhat to giants, dwarves, and goblins, but not very deeply. The other 3 human races have a sort of hierarchy of disdain. Giants and goblins look down on each other. Giants think goblins are weak and small, while goblins think giants are simple-minded and overly muscular. Dwarves are looked down upon by both sides. Giants and goblins rely too much on their natural talents and haven't thought about developing other skills. Dwarves believe that as a wise and advanced race, they should use their intelligence. They see the others as brutes who only fight and kill. They also see themselves as smarter, not fools lost in false pride. Ryan City is the main city of the dwarves. Gan-He and Sayu Luo arrived here. As they learned more, Gan-He felt he needed to buy a notebook to record everything. He wondered if there was easy-to-write paper in this technologically backward world. Gan-He was sure there was, because he had used paper before when accepting missions at the Assassin Guild. At the city gate, there were armored dwarves standing guard. They weren't checking documents, just maintaining order. So Gan-He and Sayu Luo easily entered the city. Wow, this is the main city of the dwarves. It looks way better than our country. Sayuluo looked around excitedly, constantly marveling. Gani also felt quite impressed. It had a bit of an ancient city vibe. Right after entering, they saw inns and taverns. The trading market was on the other side of the city. It's a bit disappointing not to see other races. Ganhe really wanted to see how other races look in real life. There is no need to feel regret. Ganha headed toward the tavern. He wanted to ask where he could buy some paper. He pushed open the door. Everyone inside the tavern looked at Ganha. Ganha raised an eyebrow. There must be a problem. Otherwise, why would the customers react so strongly? Siyu Luo, scared, shrank into Ganha's pocket. Facing so many eyes, Ganha was not afraid. He went to the bar and looked at the bartender. He made some gestures, pretending to write. His current role was that of a deaf-mute person, so he had to act a little. The bartender frowned, not understanding Ganha's meaning. Ganha sighed and patted Siyu Luo's pocket. What's wrong? Mr. Ganha? Help me ask this guy where I can buy some paper. Okay. Siyu Luo cautiously peeked out of Ganha's pocket, met the bartender's gaze, and shivered. But he still gathered his courage and spoke. Sorry, this gentleman is deaf and mute, so I'm speaking for him. May I ask, where can I buy some paper? The bartender was clearly surprised. Seeing the customers' reactions and that this person came to the bar without speaking, he thought he was here to cause trouble. But it was just a simple question about directions. Turn right when you go out, walk about 100 meters, and there's a general store. They should have what you need. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Have fun in Lane City, and I wish you success in your business. Siyu Luo relayed the conversation to Ganha through a voice transmission. Ganha smiled at the bartender to thank him. He then turned his head, lowered his hat brim. While pulling down his hat, Ganha glanced at the table of 3 humans who had been staring at him since he entered the tavern. He looked briefly, then withdrew his gaze and left the tavern. He stepped outside, turned right, and walked straight ahead. This is the place, Mr. Ganha. Ganha stopped and looked at the building in front of him, which had no sign. Ganha wanted to say something sarcastic. Why not put up a sign at the door? It looks just like a regular house, with no special features. Who would know it's a grocery store? He tilted his head to look in the direction he had just come from, smiled, and then walked into the grocery shop. Dingling a clear, cheerful bell rang as Ganha entered the shop. He didn't see the shop owner. He looked at some small items on the shelves, feeling a bit curious. Just as he reached out to touch and examine them, Ganha suddenly heard a strange noise. It was someone else talking, besides Sei Luo and himself. Ganha is portrayed as deaf, so he pretended not to hear and kept reaching for the small items on the shelf. At this moment, Sei Luo started whispering translations of what the third person was saying. Mr. Ganha, wait a moment. The shop owner is nearby. He said we shouldn't touch his things. Ganha paused, then withdrew his hand. Where is he? Right behind the counter. He walked to the counter, saw the shop owner, and was momentarily stunned. A dagger had already slipped into his sleeve. The shop owner was neither a dwarf nor a human. He was green-skinned, with pointed ears, small in stature. A goblin? Sei Luo glanced at Ganha's narrowed eyes and quickly whispered, Mr. Ganha, relax. This shop owner is a goblin. He's not dangerous. Goblin? Yes. Goblins enjoy trading and often appear in the territories of various races. In fact, goblins' relationships with other races are similar to how humans relate to other groups, neither good nor bad. Ganha temporarily lowered his suspicion but remained cautious. Seeing Ganha return to normal, Sei Luo began negotiating with the shop owner. Hello, sir. Do you sell paper here? The goblin lazily looked at Ganha, who had his hood covering his face, then at Sei Luo in his pocket. Paper? Yes, we do. How much do you want to buy? Ganha and Sei Luo's connection was still active. After hearing Sei Luo's message, Ganha responded. Let me see how big a sheet of paper is first. I want to buy based on the situation. Also, do you have some thicker needles and thread? Sei Luo repeated Ganha's words. The goblin owner thought for a moment and then replied. A piece of paper is about the size of this table, and there are also thicker needles and threads. By the way, what do you need the paper for? Siyu Luo acts as a translator between the two people. You don't need to worry. I want 100 sheets of large paper, 5 needles, and a bundle of thread. All right, if you don't want to say more, that's fine. I'll go carry the goods. Don't go through my stuff when I'm not around. Ganho bought needles and thread to sew the paper together. He also planned to go out of town at night, catch a moonsting wolf, skin it, and make a bag for carrying things. He didn't have much money, so he had to be careful with how he spent it. As for Ganho, who has been wandering in the wild, where does he get his money? It's definitely not from working as an adventurer or taking on quests. Because Ganho found out that this world seems to have no adventurer guild. The money didn't come from working as an assassin either. Assassin skills are even more ruthless than capitalism, often not paying wages, making people work for free. Ganho's money came from exploring a cave. Yes, he dug it up himself. But it wasn't from finding treasure chests or anything like that. In this world, money is just minerals. Gold, silver, copper. Ganho was full of complaints. These small details constantly show how backward this world's civilization is. Do you think the main story is about introducing new systems and changing the world? No, after 10 years of hard work, Ganho is tired of being a laborer. Now he just wants to live freely. Even if humanity goes extinct, it doesn't matter to him. The goblin boss hurriedly brought out what Ganho needed. He wiped an imaginary sweat. The goblin boss looked at the price. Ganho, feeling lazy, didn't want to wait. Money was useless to him anyway. He took out a gold nugget the size of a grown man's fist from another pocket inside his cloak and placed it on the table. At the same time, he told Siu Luo, "Tell this goblin that if it's enough, there's no need to look for more." The goblin boss's eyes lit up. His smile became more flattering. It seemed the weight of this gold nugget was enough. So, Siu Luo relayed Ganho's words. The goblin boss nodded and said, "Tell him we're going into town for a walk, and we'll come back to pick it up in the evening." Siu Luo relayed the message. "All right, guest. I will take good care of your belongings." Ganhe nodded and turned to leave. "Mr. Ganhe, the goblin boss, just said something earlier." It seemed to be. "This guest, if I'm not mistaken, that young guest is a little person, right? Since you gave a generous tip, I'll warn you for free. Be careful of humans." Ganhe stopped, thinking about going back to ask the goblin boss for more details. Could it be that the goblin boss didn't realize that I am also human? And he said this right in front of me? But he also mentioned little people earlier. Maybe he was warning Siu Luo to be careful of humans. But shouldn't he have told Siu Luo quietly? Why? Well, I understand why now. Because my current role is that of a deaf-mute person. Thinking about what the goblin boss said, be careful of humans. Maybe in the goblin boss's eyes, I see Siu Luo as just a tool. Siu Luo, that little guy, still doesn't realize something is off in the goblin boss's words. He's just translating exactly as I do. Now, without me saying anything, Siu Luo is already translating on his own. They left the general store. Ganhe randomly chose a direction and headed toward the other side of Lane City. He wanted to check out the trading market. Walking along the street, Siu Luo suddenly reacted to what the goblin boss had said. "Mr. Ganhe, why did that goblin boss tell us to be careful of humans? Haha, that goblin boss was talking specifically to you." "Really? Why? Did you forget? I am a deaf-mute. If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known that the goblin boss spoke again when we left. But I still don't understand what the goblin boss meant. Why should I be careful of humans?" "Mr. Ganhe, humans are good people. Siu Luo, I don't know what little people are like, but I can tell you about humans. Humans are hard to read. Sometimes, you might not even understand what they are thinking. But, I think the goblin boss's warning to be careful of humans is probably a hint. I didn't understand, but I only know that Mr. Ganhe is a good person. I will do my best to relay the message, and Mr. Ganhe will protect me, right?" Ganhe hesitated for a moment. This Siroa isn't that foolish. He already knows the real reason I brought him along. Yes, that little goblin's words. Just pay a little attention. When it comes to strangers, don't trust them too much, but also don't ignore their warnings. Next time you see a human, be cautious. Okay. When they arrived at the trading market, there were many people, but no beastmen or similar creatures. This made Ganhe wonder, are beastmen not in this world? He kept Siroa hidden in his pocket, and the two of them exchanged whispers while strolling around. "Siroa, where do beastmen live?" "Beastmen? What's that race?" "They are a race that looks like humans, but has features of magical beasts, like tails or ears. They are considered beastmen. I haven't heard of them. I only know that besides the 4 human races, there are also magical beast races and monster races in this world. I know about magical beasts, but I don't know much about monsters. If there are no beastmen, are there elves?" "Huh? Why don't I know any of the races you mentioned, Ganhe?" Elves. Could it be that you've remembered the wrong name, Ganha? Among the monster races, there is a fairy race. What's going on? If beastmen don't exist, that's one thing. But why are there no elves either? Isn't this race a standard in other worlds? Or is this a Western-style fantasy world? Even dwarves exist here. Could it be a translation mistake, or have they renamed these races? Is the fairy race actually the elves? Can you tell me about the characteristics of the fairy race? Of course, but I only heard about them from my mother. I haven't actually seen a fairy race myself. If I see one and it's different from what I said, Ganha, please don't blame me. Can I just say I'm glad you told me this in advance? If you hadn't, and we really saw an elf, and it was different from what I said, I would blame you. Hee, I just said it. Isn't there a rumor that our goblin race is a favored race by the gods? In simple words, fairies are considered the favorites of the elements. Therefore, the fairy race is also called the element fairy. Additionally, my mother mentioned a rumor that fairies are not just favorites of the elements, but that they are the elements themselves with intelligence. You could say that fairies are elemental creatures. The number of fairy types corresponds to the number of elements. Fairies are about the same size as our little people, but they all have small wings and can fly. We little people can only walk. If we could control the wind element well, that would help. Otherwise, we can only walk. Sigh, this vast land is more than 10 times bigger for us. P.S. If your understanding of the setting differs, please follow the setting in this book, which is mostly based on my own understanding. Also, please don't compare my setting to other fantasy books' races. Everyone's idea of fantasy races is different, right? Gani nodded thoughtfully. He realized he needed to forget his old world's ideas because he truly traveled here, not just imagined the story. How are humans and other races related? I'm not very sure. I've only lived in Joe City since I was young, and I only know what I heard from my mother. Joe City is the main city of the little people. It seems you love your mother very much. I've heard that from you more than once. Is your mother still in Joe City? Yes. When the king wanted to exile me, who was falsely called a divine gift, my mother was the first to come out and protect me. But I didn't want to cause her trouble, so I left Joe City on my own. Do you hate that king? If it weren't for him, maybe you and your mother would still be together. I don't hate him. He's a good king. Everything he does is for his people. I believe he had a reason to drive me out. Gani smiled. Seiyu Luo is really simple-minded. Maybe it's because Seiyu Luo is a fake, divine gift. The king probably wanted to keep his bloodline pure or protect the reputation of the divine blessing family. Then what about your father? I've never heard you mention him. I've never seen my father since I was born. I asked my mother. My mother said my father is dead. Ganho stopped walking, staring fixedly at one spot without moving. It was a small child, wearing a sign around his neck. Seiyu Luo, what does that sign say? Let me see. Seiyu Luo wasn't upset by the fact that he didn't have a father. He peeked out of his pocket and looked at where Ganho was pointing. That child was sold by his parents. Where are his parents? I don't see them. They probably told the child to sell himself. Huh, no one watching. So doesn't this kid run away? But he did run. How does he survive? Seiyu Luo looked up and met Ganho's eyes beneath his hood. Seiyu Luo, let me teach you a first lesson about human nature. First, you're right. This child did sell himself, but it wasn't because his parents forced him. It was his own choice. His own choice? Seiyu Luo lowered his head and looked back at the child, trying to find some clues. Carefully observe the small details on this child's body and remember them. He looked for over a minute. Ganho, I've remembered everything, but I still can't tell. That's okay. You'll see soon. Ganho left and returned along the same path to a house. At the door, there were many cages containing humans and magical beasts. Ganho walked in without hesitation. A greasy, disgusting man with a flattering smile greeted him. Clearly, he was a trader. All the items sold here were slaves. Ganho ignored the trader and silently moved between the cages filled with humans and magical beasts. After circling around, Ganho stopped, squatted down, and looked into a metal cage. Seiyu Luo, can you tell the difference between these slaves and that child? Seiyu Luo pursed his lips. It was his first time seeing a place that sold slaves. His heart was full of shock. Compared to that child, the people here have lost all hope for life. Yes, to put it simply, that child is selling himself, asking for someone to support him. Ganho's eyes remained fixed on the cage, and he wore an unexpected smile. Mr. Ganho, why are you always looking at this person? It's nothing, just surprised. I didn't expect to see someone I know in a place like this. Someone you know? Are you planning to buy your acquaintance? Did you forget, Sayuluo? We have no money left. Oh, right. So what do we do? Find a way to earn money and buy your acquaintance. No need. Let's leave first and come back at night. He stood up, ignoring the traders, and left the market. Ivaya, I didn't expect to meet again after half a year, and it would be at a market. If it were up to me, I wouldn't want to get involved. I dislike the system, but I can't do anything about it. It's considered normal in this world. Want to raise a banner to oppose slavery? That would mean fighting against all of humanity. There wouldn't be a single thank you then. Unfortunately, Ganho still owes Ivaya a favor. Helping her destroy the Assassin Guild, Ganho didn't want to get involved. Now, with such a good opportunity to repay her, Ganho wouldn't miss it. As long as he can save Ivaya, he won't owe her anything. Pay with money? That's impossible. Ganho has no money left himself. Besides, why should he give money to the traitors he despises? As an assassin, he should do what assassins do. Back at the general store, he checked the amount of paper and sewing supplies. Everything was fine. Then Ganho asked Sayuluo to get a room from the goblin shopkeeper. With that much gold, after buying paper and sewing supplies, he still had enough left to stay in an inn for a night. The goblin shopkeeper didn't turn hostile. In his eyes, Ganho was a big customer with a goblin servant, with a mysterious identity, something a small trader couldn't provoke. Making a good connection with a big customer was always good, even if the other wasn't a big client. Tips only cover one night's stay, and there is still a lot left. Holding a stack of papers, Kango arrives at the inn room. He puts down the papers. He takes off his cloak. He pulls out a small knife. Kango begins what he plans to do. He stacks 100 sheets of paper neatly. After a few gestures to check the size, he starts cutting. Each sheet is divided into 9 parts. 100 sheets become 900 parts. The cutting is finished. Kango takes out 100 pieces, stacks them, and sets them aside. Then he sews the 100 pieces together with thread to make a book. Yes, Kango is making a handmade sewn book. It doesn't require many skills. Each book has 100 pages. There are 9 books in total. Kango finishes quickly. All that's left are a pen and a book cover. In this world, there is ink, but the pen is just a feather plucked from a bird. It's very hard to use. Kango plans what to write in each book. A diary about the other world, creatures, culture, regions, used for learning the language of the other world. Each book has its own purpose. After finishing, Kango closes his eyes to rest and waits for night to fall. Midnight. He opens his eyes in the dark. Kango slept all afternoon and now wakes up fully alert. He skips the feeling of waking from a dream. He sits up, and the small creature sleeping on his chest falls off. The creature wakes up suddenly, startled and making a sound. Kango quickly catches it. Wow. Kango, next time you wake up, please let me know. The creature pats its chest in relief. To the creature, Kango is like a giant. Falling from his chest is like falling from about 5 meters high. Though 5 meters isn't very high for him now. Sorry, I didn't notice you were sleeping on my chest. No problem, no problem. By the way, are we going to rescue that acquaintance of yours, Kango? Yes. He puts on his cloak and places the creature in his pocket. Kango squints his eyes. Having stayed with Sayuluo for half a year, I became somewhat less cautious around him. My vigilance was lacking. I didn't expect him to lie on my chest without any warning. 2 short swords were inserted into my lower back. I jumped out of the window and disappeared into the night. At night, only a few scattered lights provided some brightness. Those were city patrols and drunken people sleeping on the streets. Ganho skillfully avoided everyone and reached the market that I visited during the day. Using the faint moonlight, Ganho looked for an entrance. He started circling around the market. Finally, he found a place to sneak in. And that was the main gate. There was no choice. Ganho circled twice, but couldn't find a small hole or hidden passage. Speaking of dogs, Ganho's hand reaching for the lock froze. Inside, there seemed to be a beast similar to a dog. I was sure I could enter and leave quietly without making any noise. But I was here to save someone. Thinking of the big iron chain locking the cage, Ganho hesitated. He wasn't sure if unlocking it would make any noise. If the noise disturbed the beast and attracted the city patrols, it would be over. I could run away, and I would. but I was worried that a wanted notice might suddenly appear, making everything difficult. Why do I know all this? Ahem. I am not talented, but the legend of Yeha still spreads in Puzon City. Looking back, I wonder how those people knew my name, even though it wasn't my real name, but a pseudonym as an assassin. Shaking my head to clear my scattered thoughts, I made up my mind. If I am wanted, so be it. I can always blame Yeha's identity. I placed my hand on the lock, turned it a few times, and it opened. Following the route I remembered, I moved quietly and carefully to the iron cage where Iavia was held. Without checking if she was the target, I directly unlocked the cage. I tried to keep the noise to a minimum. Sayuluo was lying in my pocket, almost asleep. He hadn't woken up yet. In the dark, he couldn't see anything clearly and couldn't use his mental powers to sense. Sayuluo yawned and stuck his head out of his pocket. Ganhi also just unlocked the door. He opened the iron gate and looked at the figure lying inside the cage. After watching for a while, Ganhi sighed that the person was sleeping quite soundly. There was no wake-up service, so he simply kicked the person. WH. Before Ivaya could shout, Ganhi struck with a hand chop, just enough force to make Ivaya faint. This action was not only to make Ivaya sleep more deeply, but also to confirm if it was really her. Now it was confirmed. Ganhi grabbed Iavia's ankle, pulled her over, and then carried her on his back. Okay, job done. He went back to the inn, grabbed a notebook, some sewing tools, and a bottle of ink, then hurried away. Nighttime was the best time to run. If not now, then when? Ganhi wouldn't foolishly wait until daytime to see the traders go crazy at the market. When he left the market, it seemed he hadn't closed the door. Forget it. If it's open, it's open. It's a good chance to help the traders open it. So tomorrow they won't have to bother opening the door and can just start work. Yes, I am a good person. After leaving Ryan City, where he had only stayed for a day, Ganhi headed straight for the forest. The forest was good for hiding his tracks. He ran for about an hour. Ganhi didn't pay much attention to how far he had run. He felt no pressure at all. He found a slightly open area, put Ivaya down, and began to rest. He checked the time. It should be about right. Ganhi looked at Ivaya. The girl's eyelids fluttered slightly, and she murmured softly. Her eyes opened. She rubbed her neck, looked at Ganhi, and made eye contact. Ivaya reacted quickly, stepped back, and bumped into a tree. Ugh, she changed direction and retreated, feeling around her waist, but found nothing. A flicker of panic crossed her mind, but she quickly calmed down and flicked her hand. A sword made of condensed elements appeared in her hand. Then she asked the question she hadn't finished at the market. Who are you? However, Ganhi ignored her and didn't let Sayuluo translate her words. He simply turned and walked away. Genko was not interested in Iawia's rescue journey or why she appeared at the market. People like Iawia are best avoided. Too much interaction can cause trouble. It was her own fault for not listening to him before. Now, Genko felt he owed her nothing. He wanted to leave, but someone was unwilling. Stop right there. The air behind him was torn apart. Genko calmly turned aside, avoiding Iawia's sword. Taking advantage of her moment of weakness, he kicked her. In the past 6 months, Genko hadn't just been wandering around for fun. He had been learning languages and fighting various magical beasts. His 10 years as an assassin had made him skilled at sneaking and killing, but he was not good at fighting face-to-face. Fighting monsters was his way to improve his combat skills. In this world, there were no clear levels, so Genko couldn't tell how strong he was now. He easily dodged another attack from Iawia and patted his pocket. He signaled Sayuluo to start working. A mental link. Sayuluo, ask her why she's still chasing me, even though I already saved her. Genko and Iawia were still exchanging blows. Sayuluo's voice was too quiet for Iawia to hear. He temporarily cut off the mental link and released his mental energy. He vibrated the air with his mind to produce sound through his vocal cords. What's wrong with you? We saved you, yet you're still attacking us with swords. Suddenly, a loud noise caused both Genko and Iawia to experience ringing in their ears. Surprisingly, Sayuluo's shout was quite effective. Genko and Iawia sat down to talk properly, with Sayuluo acting as a cold translator between them. Genko asked again, after I saved you, why are you still chasing me? Iawia's eyes widened in disbelief. Save me? Do I need your help? I finally found a way into the Assassin Guild, and you just ruined it. It turns out that this young girl was deliberately caught while trying to rescue her sister. But as an assassin with 10 years of experience in the Assassin Guild, how could I not know that the guild has such a recruitment channel? Haha. All right, it's clear that this young girl was tricked. She sold herself and happily gave money to others. It seems she was indeed trying to save someone. Gani sighed. Little girl, you've been fooled. Huh, I've been fooled. No way. I'm so smart, I couldn't be fooled. Now my plan is ruined. How are you going to compensate me? What a crazy person. Gani knew that Avia wouldn't listen to him at all in this state. He didn't bother wasting words. Let's fight. If you win, I'll take you to the Assassin Guild headquarters. If you lose, get lost and don't bother me. His voice was confident, but it was actually shouted out by Sayu Luo, which sounded a bit awkward. All right, that's just what I want. I've disliked you for a long time. Without hesitation, Avia's tactics were something he had almost figured out 6 months ago. But since she hadn't recognized him yet, he needed to go all out and quickly knock her down. Cut off her mental connection and hide Sayu Luo. He drew the 2 short swords from his waist, one in reverse grip, one in normal grip. He swung one sword up and the other down. Avia used her elemental sword to block the attack. But because Ganhi's 2 swords aimed in different directions, she lost her balance and was pushed back. Ganhi also saw Avia's elemental sword in the recent clash. It was made of condensed earth elements. Not a seamless piece, but assembled like puzzle pieces. The sword was full of cracks. Just as Ganhi was puzzled, Sayu Luo re-established the mental connection and whispered to him. Mr. Ganhi, the elemental sword in that young lady's hand is created by establishing mental patterns within a piece of earth, then connecting the earth elements to form the shape of a sword. If the iron elements are dense enough, she could even casually make an iron sword. This young lady's mental control is truly impressive. But this way of using mental power also has its drawbacks. As long as this young lady lets go, the mental connection will automatically break, and the elemental sword will turn into useless dirt blocks. After hearing Sayu Luo's explanation of the principle, Ganhi squinted his eyes. In the darkness, he saw Ayavia's eyes light up, with strange patterns spreading across her pupils. It was the same half a year ago. Whenever Ayavia entered this state, she seemed to have no blind spots. She could see attacks from any direction. Her twin swords struck the dirt sword, making a dull sound. Ganhi didn't rush to finish her off immediately. Instead, he increased his strength, causing Ayavia to bend her body. Ganhi chuckled. The young girl still lacks battle experience. In battle, the worst thing to do is to rely solely on strength. Ganhi slightly loosened his grip, giving Ayavia a chance to rebound and attack. Using the force, Ganhi leaned back, lifted one foot, and spun slightly. The lifted foot hooked around Ayavia's waist. The girl lost her balance and was pressed down by Ganhi. Ganhi placed his sword on Ayavia's neck, just like half a year ago when Ayavia faced him. I've won. Are you convinced? Ayavia clearly wasn't convinced and was still trying to struggle. Ganhi grabbed her restless hands, pressing them to the ground so she couldn't move. Ayavia looked aggrieved. Her carefully planned rescue plan was ruined, and now she was sitting under someone she didn't know. Why was she so unlucky? The strange patterns in her eyes disappeared, returning to normal. Ganhi flipped his short sword, tapped Ayavia's face with the blade, then let go and stood up. Sayu Luo, tell her to stop bothering us. Miss, we're leaving now. Please don't bother us anymore. After saying that, Ganhi brushed the dust off his cloak and turned to leave, showing no hesitation. After walking a short distance, Ganhi finally couldn't help but comment on Ayavia. This young girl is not serious about her training. She has the great gift of being a gifted one, but doesn't use it, only relying on swordsmanship. Ayavia isn't a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. She only has sword skills, without the blood energy that symbolizes becoming a warrior. Half a year ago, he was foolish enough not to tell the difference, thinking that whenever he saw Ayavia use swordsmanship, she was a warrior. Now, he won't make such a simple mistake again. Yes, Genko didn't realize he was still wrong. What Genko couldn't understand was why Ayavia didn't use her strengths to fight, but instead relied on her weaknesses. If Ayavia had used her control over earth elements to bother him, he wouldn't have one so easily. At this moment, Genko's mind couldn't help but think of Ayavia's strange eyes. Are those the eyes of a miracle? Hey, wait. Hearing the shout, Genko snapped out of his thoughts and waited for Sei Luo's telepathic message. Mr. Genko, that young lady is coming after us. Genko stopped and turned around. Then he saw Iavia kneeling without hesitation. Please, sir, take me to the Assassin Guild headquarters. As a reward, I am willing to do anything you ask. Haha, is this the difference between being proactive and passive? Genko really wanted to laugh. Half a year ago, he had struggled to come up with a lie, and Iavia wasn't convinced, only thinking about saving her sister. Now she's crying and begging him directly? Anything she asks for? Genko looked over Iavia's face, his eyes narrowing slightly. Let me clarify my request first, and you can decide based on the situation. Speak. Become my. Of course, he was joking. Genko just wanted Iavia to give up and retreat, knowing that with Sei Luo as a portable and obedient guide and translator, there was no other request. Why bother with Iavia? To make her a? Genko wasn't someone easily swayed by impulse. Everything he did was based on rational analysis. In short, Iavia was useless to him now, even though they shared a common enemy, the Assassin Guild. At this moment, Iavia was engaged in a fierce mental struggle. Then she suddenly looked up and met Genko's gaze. I will become your. Genko, no matter how rational he was stunned. No, girl, is your pride so cheap? To say you can just let go? But that would mean becoming a. And not a servant. A servant is just work, but it is worse than an animal. Genko clicked his tongue in frustration. However, on the bright side, Iwia truly wants to save her sister. She is willing to pay this price to rescue her. Genko will definitely seek revenge on the Assassin's Guild, but not right now. If Iwia wasn't so eager to save her sister and listen more, Genko wouldn't mind having more allies. But Genko prefers a careful plan. His plan is to slowly learn the language and culture of this world, understand different races, and find ways to become stronger. That was his original plan. Although it's slow, it's safe. Now, if he rashly rushes to the headquarters to seek revenge, he won't succeed alone and will only get himself killed. No, wait. Genko's eyes turn cold. There's no need to hesitate. He made his decision long ago. Why is he still holding back? Genko pulls out his short sword and cuts a strand of Iwia's hair. Get lost. I've told you so many times, if you don't bring it, then don't. Go play somewhere else. It's my fault for interrupting your plan. At worst, I can pretend to cooperate and send you back. He's angry at her for waking up and treating the person who tried to save her so badly, even drawing his sword. Iwia remains calm, softly snickering. Huh, so I was discovered. Earlier, Iwia pretended to be helpless, but in fact, she was mentally influencing Genko. Yes, it's her Miracle-S special skill. Iwia pats her leg and stands up, facing Genko with his sword. She crosses her arms and says nothing. Genko puts away his short sword. Sei Luo, tell her not to follow us anymore. If she does, don't blame me for being rude. Iwia doesn't reply, just stares at Genko. Without hesitation, Genko turns and walks away. Iwia follows behind him. Sei Luo can't understand the relationship between the two. Sometimes they fight, sometimes they beg. But this sister is really beautiful. Sei Luo sighs in admiration, then can't help but glance back at Iwia. Iwia notices his gaze and smiles. Another hour passes. Genko moved further away from Ryan City. Iwia also followed along. Genko stopped and looked at Iwia. How long are you going to follow me? Iwia blinked and tilted her head in confusion. In her eyes, Genko kept turning around to look at her without saying anything. Genko's previous words were a message to Sei Luo, trying to ask him to help pass a message. But Sei Luo, that guy. Genko took a deep breath. Sei Luo was asleep. He didn't wake him up. He turned around and found a good spot to sit by a tree. Genko looked up at Iwia and patted the space next to him. Iwia happily moved closer, smiling a bit foolishly. Genko took off his hood, not worried that Iwia might recognize him. He was completely different from half a year ago. Half a year ago, he had a scruffy beard and messy hair covering his face. Now his face was firm and strong, with a scar near his right eye. His hair was messy but neat. Genko pointed to his mouth, then to his ear, and waved his hand. He was showing he couldn't hear or speak. Then he made a few circles around his temple with his finger, then pointed at Iwia. His gestures were a bit abstract. Iwia finally understood after a moment. Wow, I didn't expect you to be from the East. Her words made Genko's heart tremble. From the East? Yes. By the way, uncle, let me tell you secretly, I also have some Eastern blood. My mother is from the East, and my father is from the Avelia Empire. My black hair is inherited from my mother. Pretty, right? Genko didn't know what expression to show. In a world full of rich Western fantasy style, she told him she was from the East. Black hair doesn't mean much, but if you look closely at Ievia's features, you can see some Eastern traits. But that doesn't mean much either. Appearance might just be a coincidence, similar to Eastern people in Genko's original world, but it doesn't mean their cultures are the same. Maybe she's just a human from the East living in this world. Genko calmed down and started to answer Ievia's questions. I don't know if I am from the East. I have been wandering since I was very young, with no home. I also don't know where my home is. Oh, we are similar. I have no home either. Since I was a child, I have depended on my sister. Without her, I don't know how I could survive. There is no home. At least you know who your parents are and where they are. The thought in Ganha's mind suddenly stopped. Uncle, why don't you say anything? Why aren't you with your parents? My mother died when I was very young. I have never seen my father. I only heard about him from my mother. Really? That's quite good. Hey, uncle, shouldn't you comfort me now? What's there to comfort? Losing parents at a young age when you don't understand anything means you have nothing to hold on to and no one to care for you. It's better that way. Uncle, your way of thinking is wrong. Without parents, how can we still talk like this? Ivaya looked confused, as if wondering, what is this uncle thinking? It would be better not to come into this world at all. As long as you are not born into it, you won't have to experience any pain. Ivaya shook her head. Uncle, I don't understand what you're saying. Right now, I just want to find my sister. You have to do the whole act. Ganha pretended to just learn about Ievia's goal of finding the Assassin's Guild. Find her sister? Was she taken by the Assassin's Guild? Yes. By the way, I should blame myself for my sister being taken. If I had listened to her, she wouldn't have been taken while trying to protect me. Why are you so sure your sister was taken by the Assassin's Guild? Because I saw it with my own eyes. And this. Ivaya moved slightly and took out a small object from her pocket. It looked like a symbol. A black mask with a crying face, a white mask with a smiling face, overlapping each other. Seeing this, Ivaya sighed again. Uncle, can't you really take me to the Assassin's Guild? I previously heard from an assassin that my sister has become the saintess of the Assassin Guild, the executor of the gods on earth. In half a year, she will no longer be my sister. There's almost no time left. Ganha twitched the corner of his mouth. He had just made up that story casually, and the girl really believed it. Does she believe everything others say? Maybe I should just tell you where the Assassin Guild is, and you can find out for yourself. I definitely won't go there. The place is full of dangerous monsters, more than I can count. All right, just tell me where the Assassin Guild is. Ganha didn't bother to hide it, acting like a riddle maker. Since he was already giving advice, Ivaya still refused to listen and was determined to save her sister, even if it meant risking her life. After learning the real location of the Assassin Guild, Ivaya turned and left. Ganha couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, he thought that the story about Ievia's sister might be a lie. She was telling one false story after another. It didn't matter. He had already done his best. He stood up and continued to run away. The distance was still unsafe, not only because of possible pursuers from Ryan City, but also because Ivaya might suddenly turn back. Fortunately, he had no parents or friends in this world, so he wasn't restricted. Even his race didn't limit him. The next day, Siu Luo miming woke up groggily. After regaining his senses, he crawled out of his pocket. He saw Ganha by the river, handling a large piece of fur. Ganha lifted the washed fur from the river and hung it on a pre-made rack to dry. He planned to use this fur to make a book bag. Carrying books all the time was too troublesome. Maybe later, when he had more books, he would switch to a bigger box. Mr. Ganha, what are you doing? Ganha glanced at Siu Luo and explained his idea of making a cover for the books. All right, while waiting for the fur to dry, I can't just do nothing. Siu Luo, continue teaching me how to read and write. Okay, learning to read and write was very difficult, but with the foundation from the past 6 months of training, he could at least tell the difference now, so he was making some progress. Sometimes, Siu Luo would get distracted while teaching and start talking about interesting stories he heard or experienced. Gani didn't stop him. After all, he could learn a lot about this world from Siu Luo's casual words. This was part of understanding the culture. This time, Gani interrupted Sayu Luo's lesson on his own. He was still thinking about what I said last night. People from the East. Sayu Luo, my appearance should be quite different from yours and most humans, right? Why didn't you seem surprised? Sayu Luo paused, looked at Ganhe's face, thought for a moment, then said with some surprise, Huh, really? Why is that? Hey, Sayu Luo, I'm asking you now. Sorry, Mr. Ganhe. Let me explain why I wasn't surprised. It's because I've been living in Zhou's city. Before I was driven out, I had never seen any other races besides the little people. You are the first human I've met. I thought most humans outside would look like you. All right, Ganhe could somewhat understand this reason. Since that's the case, you probably don't know about people from the East, right? Ganhe had just asked casually, not expecting to get a surprising answer. People from the East? Do you mean those living on the Eastern continent? Huh? The Eastern continent. Yes, that's what my mother told me. The land we are on is the Western continent. Between the Eastern and Western continents, there is a dangerous, endless ocean. Many years ago, it seems a piece of the Eastern continent broke off. That land was carried by ocean currents, drifting across the sea until it collided with the Western continent, his heart pounding with excitement, his hands trembling. This world was not as small as he had thought. Even the Western continent alone was vast beyond imagination. If the Western continent was so large, what about the Eastern one? And there are two continents, North and South. What might they be like? Ganhe forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't let his thoughts run wild. Before he had the chance to go to the Eastern continent, he needed to understand this world better and improve his self-defense skills. Right now, Ganhe was full of enthusiasm for learning. Once again, I learned and remembered a new character. Ganhe took a deep breath. Although it was just one character, Ganhe spent the whole day learning to distinguish it from others and how to write and pronounce it. Sayu Luo was not impatient. He just thought Ganhe was deaf and mute, so learning was twice as hard. After finishing, Ganhe didn't stop. He reached out and pinched a piece of dried animal fur. The weather in autumn was still warm, so the fur was dry. Ganhe had limited tools and didn't fuss much. He washed and dried the fur, then used it directly. He took out a small knife from his thigh, made a few gestures, and started cutting. Ganhe handled the fur roughly, simply removing the skin from the limbs and head. Only the torso's fur was left. He folded the fur and sewed from two opposite corners, completely closing the sides. He left an opening at the fold to put things in. The fur from the limbs and head was also useful. He cut the fur into 2 finger-thick strips. He stitched them together, about 40 centimeters long. He made 2 strips and sewed them onto the main part of the backpack. Now, the backpack was finished. This was the best Ganhe could do with his current skills. He put all 9 on. Ganhe picked up the fur from the head. No need to process it further. He just put it on his head, turning it into a wolf head hat. Winter was coming soon. Even though Ganhe had the blood energy of a warrior to resist the cold, having extra warmth was always better. He must thank the fur contributor here, Mr. Moon Stabbing Wolf. Thank you so much. Ganhe carried his homemade backpack and tried it out by carrying it around a few times. It felt pretty good. Then he looked at Sayu Luo, who was staring at him eagerly. Oh right. Ganhe had the blood energy to resist the cold, but Sayu Luo had nothing. Luckily, there were some leftover scraps. Ganhe casually made a winter coat for Sayu Luo. He wasn't skilled enough to make a delicate, small coat, so he just sewed a simple, hoodless cloak. Here, try it on. Sayu Luo looked at the rough fur cloak and then at Ganhe. Is this for me? Of course it's for you. Otherwise, who else could wear such a small one? Could it be for my second brother? Second brother. Mr. Ganhe, does he have a brother too? It's nothing. Just a joke from my hometown. Try it on quickly. If it doesn't fit, I can make some adjustments. Sayu Luo took the cloak, put it on, and although it was simple, it just covered his whole body. And it was very warm. Sayu Luo smiled broadly. Thank you, Mr. Ganhe. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 months went by. The weather quickly turned colder. Sayu Luo also wore the fur cloak that Ganhe had prepared for him. Now, Sayu Luo was playing in the snow while wearing the cloak. Ganhe was on a cleared open space nearby, doing physical training shirtless. He was shirtless because exercise makes him sweat, and in the cold winter, wet clothes would freeze and feel uncomfortable. It's better to train shirtless, sweat out, and then put on clothes once the sweat dries. After nearly a year of physical training, Ganhe discovered something about the warrior, blood energy. First, blood energy is similar to the battle aura or fighting spirit in fantasy stories from the old world, but it's not exactly the same. In those stories, battle aura is usually used to strengthen the body or as a basis for special abilities. But in this world, the blood energy of the warrior is different. Blood energy is just a name. In fact, the real strength of the warrior comes from the body itself. When the body gets stronger, the blood energy becomes more vigorous. So what is the purpose of blood energy? It has only one ordinary use. It helps to see how strong someone's body is. It doesn't enhance the body or help release special skills like in fantasy stories. The strength of a warrior is entirely controlled by oneself, with no uncertainties. By the way, blood energy really only refers to physical strength. Skills or martial arts don't increase blood energy. Ganha doesn't know what level his blood energy is at now. He asked Siyu Luo, who only vaguely said it was like a torch. Although a bit silly, Ganha decided to give his current state a name to help distinguish it in the future. Fire Lamp, let's consider this as the second level for now. The first level is called Fire Flame. Ganha seemed to become obsessed with thinking of names for these levels, wondering if he should come up with a beginner level name as well. Sparks note. This refers to tiny sparks, not the planet Mars orbiting the sun. After some thought, he decided not to bother, as it would be too complicated. With the idea in mind, Ganha confidently wrote it down in his notebook. By the way, it's worth mentioning that Ganha searched for a long time but couldn't find a pen he liked. He had to use a feather he disliked. Feathers are really hard to use. Not only is writing uncomfortable, but each time he writes a few words, he gets ink on his fingers. It's very annoying. However, after a month of practice, Ganha was starting to get used to it. He had no choice but to adapt. As he learned more about this world, he had already written half a book. The more he wrote, the more accustomed he became to using his feather. Currently, Ganha and Sei Luo are in a small border village within the human empire, the Avelia Empire. This was Ganha's decision. He had no particular destination in mind, just decided to settle down somewhere, learn the language of this world, gather more information, and then decide where to go next. When he first arrived in the village, the villagers talked about Ganha's appearance, which looked like someone from the east. But it didn't take long for everyone to get used to him and go back to their routines. Ganha built a small wooden house himself. Initially, the village chief wanted to make things difficult for him as an outsider. But when he saw Ganha easily defeated a monster species, a forest giant bear, and even offered the entire bear to the village, everyone's attitude changed completely. They even helped him enlarge his small wooden house. As for why Ganha didn't choose a deserted place, but instead settled in a village with fewer than 20 households, it was because overhearing conversations helped him learn the language of this world more easily. The human brain is truly amazing. Even if you don't intentionally learn something, if someone nearby keeps talking and doing things casually, one day you will surprise yourself by realizing you can do it. So, when he has free time, Genko often goes to busy places in the village. Not only can he subconsciously learn the language of this world, but he can also hear gossip through the translation device from Sairoa. Of course, the villagers don't know about Sairoa's existence. Genko hasn't forgotten what the goblin boss said in Ryan City. Whether true or not, it's better to be cautious. Also, the little race hides in a special space, which might be related to some secret they can't let others see. Today, Genko finished his physical training. Instead of going to the usual gossip spot, he carried the winged tiger pelt he hunted a few days ago, planning to sell it in the nearby town. He wants to buy some cooking spices. Eating bland food is really uncomfortable. A few days ago, the village chief invited Genko to his house for a meal. That's when he learned that this world actually has spices. Genko won't foolishly choose a life of hardship. He still wants to enjoy a good life. The town at the edge of the village is also on the border. The town's name is Vano Town. When Genko first arrived here, he saw an orphanage. He paused for 2 seconds to think outside the orphanage, then carried the winged tiger pelt and went inside. Genko didn't wear a flashy cloak that would attract attention. He wore the usual NPC 3-piece set, a flat-topped hat, a coat, and sturdy cloth shoes. In the orphanage yard, all the children sat obediently on the ground, listening to the director speak. Both the children and the director looked at Genko. Genko was prepared. He took out a board he had written on with Sairua's help in the little wooden house. It said, "I'm deaf and mute. Sorry, I can only express myself with words. I want to exchange this winged tiger pelt for some cooking spices. Is that okay?" Genko saw the director make a strange gesture, a hint of pity on his face, and then he said something before turning to leave. At this moment, Sairua also transmitted a message. The director agreed. From his expression, he seems to be a follower of the Avilia Church. That's another piece of information he hasn't heard before. Genko plans to ask Sairua about it when he gets back. Ganha cast a kind smile as he looked at the children. He wasn't here out of kindness to exchange tiger skin for seasonings. He sensed something was wrong with these kids. On the surface, they seemed normal. They were all curious and looking at Ganha. But after watching closely, he noticed their movements were stiff and their expressions were fixed. Ganha was very familiar with this situation. The children had been brainwashed. And there's another problem. All these children are girls. It's obvious who is behind all this. Although he disliked the headmaster's strange habits, Ganha didn't plan to interfere. Because, in the past world, Ganha had little patience for children, even though he himself was once a child. You can't blame these kids for what others did to them, right? But Ganha had another reason. These children are orphans. Ganha saved them. How should they live? Should he raise them? Do you think that's possible? So, it's better to let these children continue to be puppets of the headmaster. Ganha looked at the headmaster, took the seasonings, and showed a grateful smile. Ganha took the seasonings from the headmaster and expressed thanks with a smile. He turned around, and his smile disappeared instantly as he returned to his wooden house. Siuluo had been trying to practice mental energy cultivation for nearly a year, but had no progress. He could only communicate telepathically. Ganha wasn't in a hurry. He was even mentally prepared for Siuluo to fail in finding a mental energy method. Since he couldn't pursue dual cultivation of magic and martial arts, he decided to focus on martial arts to the extreme. Swish, swish, blades and swords flashed. Ingredients were easily cut into small pieces. Ganha's hands moved quickly, handling all the ingredients effortlessly. After preparing the ingredients, he started stir-frying. Soon, a dish with an unknown name was ready. Ganha used homemade chopsticks, while Siuluo used a spoon. After 11 years, Ganha finally ate normal food and couldn't help but feel tears of joy. The ingredients weren't familiar. According to Siuluo, this thing is called tree fruit. As the name suggests, it's a fruit that grows on trees. But Ganha feels that it tastes a bit like potatoes. However, the flavor is still slightly different. Just this small difference makes Ganha very happy, because it satisfies his idea of delicious food. For example, a dish you've never eaten before, only seen others eat or heard about from their stories. At that moment, your mind starts to imagine the taste of that dish. Then, when you finally taste it, you find it's not as delicious as you imagined. While feeling satisfied that you've eaten, you also feel a little disappointed that the flavor isn't quite what you expected. Sometimes, the flavor your mind imagines might be something the world has never experienced. Now in this different world, Ganha feels his imagination has been fulfilled, thanks to the ingredients and seasonings. After finishing the meal, Siuluo takes the initiative to wash the dishes. But he's not as big as a bowl, so Ganha still has to wash the dishes himself. After washing the dishes, Ganha sits at the table and begins to write his diary. He uses Chinese characters. That way, others won't understand what he's writing, making it like a secret code in this world. He starts with his feelings after finishing training. Training is over. I feel my physical strength has improved a bit. As for power, I think I could punch a wolf's head off. My leg strength allows me to jump about 3 meters high easily. Without tools, but that's just an estimate, not very accurate. My speed is about 5 seconds for a 100-meter dash. 20 meters per second in 1 second. That's something I wouldn't have dared to imagine in my old world. Endurance is hard to define, so I'll leave it blank.